What's up, guys? So, I just want to share um, a couple verses today and just a couple points that I want to make about these verses. All right. So, in 1 John chapter 4, verse 7, it says this: Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. Um, so point number one that I want to make here is that it says in that first sentence of verse 7, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God." We've already kind of talked about this, but love comes from God. I think it's so crucial, so important that love comes from God and not from us. And the only way that we are able to genuinely love anybody else is by accepting God's love. You can think of it like we're like this cup, and in order and water is like love, and God pours his love into us so that we can pour it into other people, so we can use it, we can do something with it, we can love uh, and be loved. And so you pour out into others, you love others, and then you need refilled. It's love comes from God, right? So, and it says here, everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. So if we know that love comes from God, then that means the only way that you can genuinely love is if you are a child of God. If you are not a child of God, I don't think you can genuinely love, because you haven't experienced the deepness of God's love. Okay, now skip down to verse 16. And he says this: "And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them." So between verse 7 and 8 and verse 16, he just explains more things about love. And he says, "And so we know and rely on the love God has for us." God is love. So we know that if we're to genuinely love, it's got to come from God. So we have to be connected to God. We also have to rely on the love that God has for us, because we can't love without the love that God has for us. And his love is what takes care of us. It's what nurtures us. The Bible says that he lavishes his love on us, meaning it's like you're completely surrounded by his love. And now, I'll say again, we don't understand his love. We don't. We see glimpses of it. Maybe over time we start to understand slivers of it, but it's vast, it's deep, and we just don't understand it. So I'm going to tell you right now that his love is going to look different than what you think it is, than how you think it'll look. And we have to understand that it's from him alone. So even when other people genuinely love you, it's because they've been loved by God. And we have to understand that we need to rely on his love. That he is love. Now I'm going to read verse 17 and 18. "And this is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world we are like Jesus. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love." And so these are the last verses I want to talk about. I want to be honest with really just with these passages in First John. don't really, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, these are some passages that I think I struggle understanding more than other passages. And I feel like there's a lot that I still don't understand from these passages. But one thing that I do get, even just from the verses that I just read, it says in verse 18, there's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. So it says there's no fear in love. There's no fear in genuine love. And that could be talking about how if we genuinely love, we know that God is in us. We know that we are saved. We know that God is looking out for us. We know that we've experienced his love, and so we can show that love to others. So we don't need to be afraid of anything in this world because we're already saved. We don't even need to be afraid of being eternally punished. We're saved. Now, does that mean we rule out all fear of God? No. The Bible talks about how we ought to fear God. But it probably doesn't mean, I think it probably doesn't mean what maybe you think it means at first. I think it means some different things, but that's for another video. Okay, I want to keep this one short. And so my thought was this, my closing thought is this, is that if we really want to love, I think we got to make less of ourselves and more of God. A while ago, I did this example. I don't know. It doesn't really work to do it now on camera, but a lot of you guys have seen this example that I did where I took one of those, plastic water bottles that, those really cheap plastic ones that once you drink it, you can kind of like crumple it, that it's so, the plastic's thin and it's cheap, and it's almost like that's us. And sometimes it feels like we're not completely full. Sometimes it feels like we're not completely full of God. Right? But sometimes what we need to do is actually unscrew the cap, squeeze it a little bit. It makes the bottle smaller and makes the water rise. Let's say the water is God, right? The bottle is you, the water is God. It makes the water rise. You put the cap back on, and now the bottle's full, but the bottle's smaller. Sometimes we need to make ourselves smaller so that God can shine through more. And that, I think, is how we ought to love. All right. Have a good rest of your guys' day.